it's Ileana, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make a swatch card for some watercolor pencils. I'm going to be using the Waffle Flower Color Swatch stamp set. I've already mounted into the MISTI, and now I'm just going to be adding my watercolor paper. I'm using the Fabriano Artistico Extra White watercolor paper, and this is a hot press paper. I'm going to be inking it up with my Ink on 3 waterproof blackout ink, so this won't like spread or smear or get ruined when you add water to it. So I'm just stamping it down, and because the watercolor paper, even though it's hot press, which means that it's not as textured as cold press, there are still ridges in it. So I'm going to stamp this quite a few times, and you just want to make sure that your watercolor paper is tucked into the corner. So I'm going to keep repeating this until I get a solid black line around all of my squares. I just want to make sure that it looks good. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to be using my MISTI square ruler, and I created this for multiple reasons. Number one, I like that it's almost completely flat. There's just a tiny little bit of a ridge so that it'll still catch your paper. What I hated doing with regular T-square rulers is having to make tick marks to know where to draw my lines. And because I created the T-square ruler, the mini T-square ruler, with grid lines, what I'm doing is I'm using the grids to make sure that I am starting at the same point, and then I'll move it up, and then I'll use the lines on the grid to line up with the pencil line I just made. And that way each line is equally spaced. So I'm just going to keep pushing it up and starting in the exact same grid square, so the beginning of each line is in exactly the same spot. So I've gone through and I've drawn out 24 lines, and they're all equally spaced. Now I'm going to be using my watercolor pencils from Altenew. These are the woodless ones. And so I've already arranged them in the order that I want to color them. So I kind of like played around with the colors to see which ones should be next to each other. I'm only going to be coloring in the very top part of the rectangle. There are three little sections to each square, and so I'm just going to color in just the very top portion of each one of those. Now that I'm done coloring in all of my squares, or rectangles I should say, I'm going to just start to pull the color down with a wet brush. I have 2 cups and they're kind of off screen. So one I use to clean my brush off, and then the other one I use to have clean water. So I do rinse it off first, and then I go into the clean water. And then I tap off a little bit of the water onto my microfiber towel so that it's not so wet. And now I've dragged the color straight down. So I'm just bringing that color down so that you could see how the color fades. I'm going to use my Copic Multiliner to mark each one of the rectangles so that I could create a key for the swatch. I've taken the thinnest marker, and I'm just going to write a number underneath each one of the rectangles. I did use a bigger tip when I wrote the names, and so I'm just going through and writing the names of each one of the colors. My next step is to stamp the title to the swatch, and I'm using my Fawn alphabet set. So I've used several sets. The largest one that you see is Violet's ABCs. The medium one is Milo's ABCs, and the smallest one is Smitty's ABCs. And because the paper is rigid, it has texture to it, I'm having to stamp each one of these a couple of times. Here's a close-up of my swatch. I did go back and I did erase the pencil lines with a mechanical eraser. You'll see that the colors do blend really nicely. I hope you've enjoyed this video and how you could use your T-square ruler to draw some lines onto your project without having to really measure anything. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.